being here. My name is Lomena Gelis. I come from Spain, but I work and I'm based in Dakar, in Senegal. In fact, I'm doing my PhD thesis at the same time I'm working full-time. I work for the United Nations Capital Development Fund, which is a small UN agency working in local development and microfinance, and I do M&E. But here I wanted to share with you the the first draft of the second chapter of my PhD thesis. The title by now is Conceptual and Analytical Framework for Meta-Evaluation of Evaluations of Local Climate Change Adaptation Initiatives in Senegal. This is part, I'm doing a PhD at the Polytechnic University of Catalonia, and I also have a supervisor at the University of Complutense of Madrid, Maria Bustero here. So I wanted to start with the context of the article. I already worked on the first article that I presented at the AfrEA, at the conference of the African Evaluation Association last January, and over there I just analyzed the evaluation practice in Senegal, trying to portray what has been the evolution since the independence, the institutions that have been more or less active in evaluation practice and in planning and evaluation, because planning has been more prominent in the agenda of the Senegalese government, and what's been the role of donors in shaping the agenda of evaluation. This is more or less a brief summary of the first article or the first chapter. This second one, which is the one I want to share with you again as a first draft, and I'm more than happy to receive all your feedback to improve that version, is this methodological framework, conceptual analytical framework, and I chose meta-evaluation to analyze this evaluation practice in this specific policy sector, which is local climate change adaptation. This is this LCCA, or we talk about similar projects, programs, or policies that are also named or called sustainable land management in the framework of the desertification narratives in the Sahel and sub-Saharan Africa. Okay, these are the types of interventions I'm going to focus, and I'm going to analyze the evaluations that were conducted during this period. That will be the next chapter. And then in the fourth article, the fourth chapter, I want to use this analytical and conceptual framework to more restricted sample of evaluations depending on the availability and quality of the information that is over there. That is one of the main challenges of my PhD thesis, trying to find and build this sample, this database of evaluations. This is just the context. We don't have much time, so I tried to summarize what is in the paper. I have a full paper from this presentation that I could share with you if you are willing to share your comments and your ideas with me. But just very briefly, some of the main definitions of the concept of meta-evaluation, as Bert just mentioned, Scriven was one of the first authors to use or to put out there the concept, evaluation of evaluations in a general way, the systematic research to issue a judgment about the worth and merit of an evaluation. So not the worth and merit of a program or a project or policy, but the evaluation of that intervention. Another definition, more recent one, the systematic review of evaluations to determine the quality of the processes and findings. And here we have an interesting detail. We are not just talking about findings, also about the processes of evaluations. That is one of the main differences with other concepts. That will be my next slide. But the idea is that meta-evaluation is focused on how evaluations are done and not just on the results or the findings of evaluations, which will be the focus of other usually misunderstood concepts that I try to summarize here. we have the synthesis evaluation synthesis that try to summarize, and I think we are, like the rest of presenters are going to emphasize that, so I'm going to focus on my case study. But just very briefly, we have this qualitative evaluation synthesis that are usually called narrative research reviews, or the quantitative, they are the meta-analysis that is very, very commonly misunderstood as meta-evaluation. And you are going to see in the sample of meta-evaluation, in aid development, in the aid development context, we still find some meta-evaluations that are real meta-evaluations, but the title, it says meta-analysis. So there is still lots of confusion with the concepts. Then we have the systematic reviews that have like some parts that are similar to meta-evaluation, but their focus and their objectives and their methodology is not that...
All three of us.
Okay. So I'm going to talk for half an hour.
20 minutes.
I don't know. I'm joking. So the idea of a systematic review is that we use a rigorous peer review methodology, a protocol, and we try to summarize evidence around a research question, but not just taking evaluations. It's a broader concept, and it's very well established. And then we have meta-evaluation, that it's the approach that I chose. That is evaluation of evaluations, and here I try to put like what is in the literature. What I found that can be more interesting for my case is just understanding meta-evaluation as the evaluation of the designs, the processes, the results, and the utilization of evaluations. And I'm going to develop on that idea later on. Here I'm jumping, and maybe if I have more time. Okay. Another idea that I was not going to mention when I had less time, but I think now I can argue a little bit more, is that usually meta-evaluation in literature and in the practice of meta-evaluation, you can distinguish two functions. One of them it's called sometimes the theoretical function, and the other one is the practical function. The second one is the most common function, or the function that has been used more commonly, that is just to focus on the quality of some evaluations. And quality meaning like specifically the methodological quality, the robustness of the evidence that has been used, but it's more something that deals with specific evaluations, even if it's a set of them, but specific, like the specific quality. And the first function, that is the one that I'm going to try to explore in this PhD thesis, is this kind of theoretical function where we try to assess what's the role of the evaluation in the policy function, or even in the evaluation practice in a certain context. So what I'm going to try to do here is to use meta-evaluation, not just to assess what has been the quality of a set of evaluations in climate change adaptation interventions in Senegal, but I'm going to try to approach what's the evaluation function, the evaluation practice in Senegal during that period, through the study of the evaluations that have been conducted, but not in an isolated way or methodological or technical way, but taking into consideration all the context or the utilization, all the institutions that are playing a certain role in those processes of evaluation. Okay, so this is one of the distinctions that was after this slide that I decided to cut because we didn't have more time. We could discuss about that if you want after the presentation. And now I wanted to share with you just what I've reviewed so far to understand what's out there in terms of meta-evaluation. And one source of information has been all the approaches and standards that has been put out there from a theoretical point of view, or from a more practical way through checklists. And this kind of picture that is, tries to portray the 13 approaches and standards that I have studied, I have reviewed, just trying to find some sort of inspiration for my own approach to be applied in this policy sector, local climate change adaptation in Senegal in the last decade. So here I try to distinguish like a kind of, like to put it in a kind of graphic. The red ones could be are the theoretical frameworks, like coming more from the academia, from the main authors that put out there the concept, and then some of the standards that like some of the evaluation associations all over the world are using to think about what's quality evaluation. So of course we have the program evaluation standards with 3 versions or three editions, and then I put these kinds of thank you, arrows. No, it was in French. And sorry about that. So this means that there are some African evaluation guidelines that got their inspiration from the program evaluation standards, and I studied that because over there we can find some kind of standards, some ideas that I'm going to try to use in my own conceptual framework. The same applies to the program evaluation meta-evaluation checklist, Stuffelbeam, and this CIPP. Then we have over there in red Scriven with the key evaluation checklist, and then I found a very interesting PhD thesis, the key 8 evaluation checklist, and since Ryo tried to contextualize the key evaluation checklist in 8 development cooperation, I thought that it could be interesting for my case, so I studied that as well, and then the meta-evaluation checklist. Then I also had a look to these more practitioner-oriented standards, because there are also ideas about quality of evaluation, like as you know, the criteria for evaluation, development assistance, and the UNEC norms and standards. There are 2 checklists that are like very, very straightforward, the quality of terms of reference and the quality of evaluation reports. And then, since I'm going to try to grasp what's going on with the process and what are the actors involved in certain evaluations, I also had a look to these credentials or competency-based standards or approaches from the American Evaluation Association and the Canadian Evaluation Society. And since my case study is dealing with climate change, I had a look to these Bellagio principles, which are guidelines to evaluate sustainable development interventions. Again, this is just a first draft, but I had a look to these 13 standards, and when I was drafting my own questions for my approach, I tried to be kind of systematic, saying like, I got the inspiration from this standard of this approach. You'll see that in the table afterwards. And then this is the first flow of information that I reviewed to try to find my own inspiration. And then the second one is that I started looking for the meta-evaluations that had been conducted in 8 development evaluation. And so far, and again from 2000 to yesterday, because maybe I'm going to find more before publishing the paper. And so far I found 23 cases, which I analyzed, and here are some of the conclusions of this sample of 23 meta-evaluations. The majority of them has meta-evaluation in the title, but as I mentioned before, there are some of them that are called meta-analysis or evaluation synthesis, and then when you go, you analyze the concept, you realize that it's more a meta-evaluation. So there is a kind of confusion, and that's why I decided to incorporate them in my sample. The majority of them are external, but it's like 8 development agencies start to integrate meta-evaluation as a common practice. They are usually very long documents, 76 pages as an average. So I read some of them that were like 200 pages. And usually that's an average, again, 50 evaluations. So this gave me an idea of I'm going to try to find 50 evaluations in Senegal. And I think I could arrive, but I'm not sure yet. And the time covered is just five years, again as an average. Another interesting finding is that organizations are already, but you said 20.
Exactly.
Really? Okay, so meaning that meta-evaluation is getting institutionalized in some organizations. Again, there is some confusion, like understanding meta-evaluation as a light systematic review, and the objectives are kind of mixed. But, well, it's not just the improvement of individual evaluations, but it's usually kind of related to the analysis of the evaluation system overall. And then in terms of standards, I didn't find anything like, the majority of them are not using those standards I just analyzed, like from the academia. And well, here I wanted just to, it's not possible to show, like to share with you every question, but I wanted to give you a flavor of what's the idea. Maybe we can discuss from that, or you can have like some kind of feedback. By now I arrived to a 28 meta-evaluation question framework, and as I mentioned before, it's focused on the design, process, results, and utilization of evaluations, and I tried to class the questions using these 4 dimensions. And here I want to share with you like some what's the framework looks like by now. You see design, the evaluation, that would be like the stage of the evaluation. Then I put like some criteria and some of the meta-evaluation questions that I want to ask for specific evaluation processes. And here you have the acronyms I mentioned just before. So this would be for the design, for the process. So the design, I want to apply these to the terms of reference and evaluation reports of the evaluations. For the process, I'm going to do this just in-depth meta-evaluation, because I'm going to try to interview the actors and try to see how the evaluation process took place. For the results, I'm going to be based in the evaluation reports, but again, with all the information I can get from the interviews. And for the utilization part of the meta-evaluation, I'm going to try to be to see what has been the follow-up of the evaluation, what has been the utilization in other programming or in the policy sector, and just, I just finished. So I believe the conclusions. That was easy. Okay, so just to summarize in 30 seconds, I think this conceptual framework can give us some ideas, as I said, not just of like using meta-evaluation as a quality control mechanism, but just to understand in a broader way what's the evaluation practice in this policy sector in Senegal for the past decade. I think it was very, very interesting or very important to see these 4 stages of the evaluations instead of just focusing on the results part. And the idea is that this is just a first draft. Now I'm putting together the sample of evaluations, and I'm going to pilot it with some of the evaluations. And then I'm pretty sure I'll see that, okay, that question was not realistic at all. I won't have the information necessary. And I think I still have to do more work in trying to contextualize this in the policy sector. So next chapter, what I'm going to be looking at is what are the key research questions in climate change adaptation in Senegal. I'm going to try to mainstream some of those questions in my conceptual framework. Thank you very much.